right, I will give everybody a couple of seconds to join in while I'm running through some of the housekeeping items. First things first, this is going to be recorded for everyone who's attending. I'll have this recording sent out to you guys likely tomorrow morning so that if you miss something and want to revisit it, you have that available. And if there's any time you want to go back and go through whatever we were talking about or share with your, peers, feel free to do that as well. Another thing I want to go over is that we are going to try and make this as collaborative as possible. It's obviously a lot more interesting and engaging when it's not just necessarily us speaking at you. It's more of a collaborative effort. So feel free to use either the Q&A function or the chat function within Zoom to send us any questions that you have. And as we're going through our presentation, I'll try and pull up the questions in real time if I'm able to. And if not, we have 10 minutes set aside at the end to run through any questions that you guys have. So I'm really excited to get started. To give you guys a little bit of background on who I am, just because I'm obviously speaking. My name is Deirdre Hinksman. I'm the marketing manager here at Benu. And as you guys can see, we have Paolo and Mike McFarland with us. We're super, super excited to talk about our work from home solution, what Liberty Latin America is planning on doing, and sort of their process and evaluation and what that's looked like over the last couple of months trying to adapt to some of the changes that we're all experiencing right now. So Paolo, I'll hand it over to you if you want to introduce yourself really quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Very excited to be here today, Sasha, and obviously it honors us a lot. My name is Paul Simões. I work at Liberty Latin America, heading the product development in the B2B connectivity, managed networking, and security area since last year, and obviously working before that many years already with Benu back in Liberty in Europe, and obviously looking forward to sharing this experience here today with the audience.
Great, we're excited to have you. And then Mike, if you want to give us a little bit of background on you as well.
Yeah, Mike McFarland. I head up product management at Benu Networks. I've been in the networking and telecom space pretty much my whole career. So that's a lot of years. And I'm looking at this slide and thinking, man, I really have some profile picture envy right now. I need something a little cooler to sit here next to Paolo. So.
All good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So to walk you guys through or give you kind of an idea of where we're going today, first things first, we'll give you a little bit of an introduction to Benu for those who may be not so familiar. And then we'll also give you guys an overview of Liberty Latin America, what brands they have under their umbrella and what sort of initiatives they're working on in the grand scheme of things. So really a high level overview of who we both are and how we work together. And then we're gonna run through some of the impacts of coronavirus, which I'm sure we're all way too familiar with, but really sort of piecing apart, what are the challenges that not only we face as employees, but as employers, what does that look like? From a carrier trying to help solve those problems, what does that look like? And really what that landscape was like trying to traverse it and find a solution that worked, not only for Liberty Latin America to fit into their solution, but also to then be able to deploy to a group of various different types of customers as well. And so that kind of bleeds into what it looks like to try and deliver connectivity rather than what we would typically be used to, which is an enterprise headquarters or an office or a data center out to the edge, to the employee's home, to be able to make sure that they're productive, they're able to stay connected, and of course that all of this is done securely. So then we'll have Paolo walk through, what that was like for them. What did they consider? How did they get feedback from their customers? What did they find to be blockers or key priorities that they were looking for in a solution? And then we'll give you guys an overview of our solution in general, what that looks like, how you guys can customize it to fit your needs, so on and so forth. And like I said before, we'll have some time for questions at the end, but feel free to send them in as we go. So to give you guys a quick overview of us, we are Benu Networks. We were established in 2010. We have offices all over the world and serve some of the biggest operators, which is really exciting for us. We're an industry leader in SD Edge solutions, and so what that means is our overall goal, the thing that we're striving towards in all of our products and solutions, is to really simplify the edge. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to be connected in a way that's engaging and interesting, and continues to adapt, obviously, as the market adapts. One thing to note too is that we're engineering led. We're a pretty small company, but a majority of our employees are engineers, which is really cool. We're obviously really big on innovation, and we like to keep it that way. So that's a little bit about us. And to give you some context in terms of our customer base, like I said, we're a global company. This is just a sampling of some of the customers that we have spread out across the world. Obviously, you can see Liberty Latin America here, and that's kind of what we'll focus on today, is their journey with our solutions and why that was a good fit for them. And then to give you an additional idea in terms of what we're talking about from a traffic perspective, we actually process over 7 petabytes a day, and we have over 24 million connected wireless LAN APs and CPE gateways, which is something that's really, really exciting. I don't think a lot of companies, especially vendors, can say this, which we can, and we've been able to do reliably for over a decade. So just to give you guys some context. And then Paolo, if you want to give us a quick overview of Liberty Latin America, who you guys work with, maybe some of the brands that you guys have that maybe people aren't as don't necessarily connect the dots that's you guys.
Thank you for the intro. And yeah, you saw a couple of those logos already on the previous map. Liberty is acting on both sides of the Atlantic with different names, some more familiar, others not. Virgin in the UK and Ireland, Telenet in Belgium, UPC in Switzerland. We had a recent announcement of that very exciting acquisition with Sunrise there. But today we want to focus more on the Liberty Latin America group, where once again we have very, very good brands in cable and wireless. In Panama, for example, MásMóvil, DTR in Chile, Liberty in Puerto Rico, and also here again, very exciting announcements regarding M&A with the acquisition of the AT&T assets in the Caribbean or the Telefonica assets in Costa Rica more recently. Okay. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, here you can see that we're leveraging a very extensive subsea network, and we have multiple brands in the different countries. Overall, we have more than 10,000 employees. We are serving 20 plus residential markets, 30 plus B2B markets with products, which is broadband, fixed telephony, video, B2B, mobile in some of those markets too, offering triple play, quadruple play. And today we are going to talk a little bit more about how that mix, which is a work from home, which is half home, half residential, half enterprise, came to be, and how we reacted to that inside our 4 billion revenue operation here in the area.
Great. Thank you. All right, so you guys may be familiar with some of these images, but I kind of wanted to take us back, pre-coronavirus. Some of the things that were really buzzing, really caught people's attention, was trying to create, these amazing spaces to work from, which now obviously has changed. Enter coronavirus, and, now there have been, obviously this is a pandemic, this is something that touches everyone globally. So there have been shifts in the way that not only we live our daily lives, of course, but the way that we have to work and the way that we have to engage with our peers and our customers. And it's been a big shift, and it's been something that's happened very, very quickly, which, as you can imagine, from an enterprise perspective and from a carrier perspective, is super difficult. Particularly from an IT perspective, it's not usual that something of this scale would be deployed in such a short time frame, but obviously there's a need, and so that has to be filled and served as well. So we're just trying to adjust what we're doing. But one thing that we did want to dig a little bit deeper into is that working from home is not necessarily something that's new. And so as an enterprise representative or as a carrier, you have to try and understand, is this something that's worth investing in the long term? Is this something that's going to be here just while we're trying to adjust to coronavirus, or is this going to last a little bit longer? And so it's been made clear to us through research, and Paulo, if you want to talk through some of the customer feedback that you've got, that this is not necessarily something that is temporary or something that's just a trend that will fade away. Teleworking is something that has been growing over the last couple of years and has really only been accelerated in the last couple of months due to the coronavirus, but it's not necessarily something that's going away. So Paulo, how did you guys come to get information from your customers and really evaluate whether or not this was something that, is worth investing in from the long term?
Yeah, thank you, Sarsha. Obviously, where teleworking was already a thing, as you can see from the stats out there, not only in US or Europe, but also in Latin America and the Caribbean. But come March, obviously, we were approached by major customers with very concrete needs. But depending on the stats, you read between 60 and 90% of the workforce was sent home. And companies were really struggling to find solutions, because I normally joke that the first priority was toilet paper, the second was connectivity. And then obviously they knocked on our door. We are top of mind in the region. And they really, really wanted us to help them achieve that move in a productive manner. And we really saw that it was really an exploding trend. And you might think that some countries are more prone to that, like the US or Europe. But actually, as you might see, for example, in the next slide, the next stats, the region of Latin America was very, very quick to react. 1 or 2 weeks after the first cases, we had curfews, we have schools closed, we have office closed, we have everything being sent home. So this is really a situation where our customers were unprepared for. You can see that working from home had a 300% in Google search. No one knew how to deal with that. And really, companies didn't have the tools, they didn't have the procedures, they didn't have the policies, and they really invited us to sit at the table and to listen with them and to really understand how many people, in which areas, what are they concretely doing, what is the concrete use case. Are these call center agents which need to be constantly on calls or on video calls? Are these just normal office workers, secretaries, which need to have Office 365 access? Are these more delicate workers who need a little bit more confidentiality, security? Are these people who, like you and me, spend their time on MS Teams or Zoom? So we really found that it's not really one size fits all. But what we really found is that most of those employees were in the same country. Many people talk about teleworking as being that thing where can contract from other continents, where you might have a little bit cheaper labor. What we found was that no, it is mainly inside the same country that they want to expand that to, and they want to keep it. And when I talk about they want to keep it, it is not a phase. Many of the companies we talk to say, currently we have 90% of our workforce out there, but we expect between 60 and 80% of that workforce to remain remote. either 100% of the time or 2, 3, or 4 days out of the week. Okay? So this is not something you invest in and you create procedures and you deploy it, and once there's a vaccine, everything goes away. Now, it is really something, it's here to stay. And this is really the type of dialogue we have as a partner with our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And so it kind of became clear then that making an investment in a solution for your customers for working from home in the long term was a priority that made sense.
Yeah.
Now it's just about a matter of trying to figure out what the best way to do that would be. So I think that you guys can see, let me share this. So I just launched a poll to figure out, just get a gauge for you guys. How do you feel about working from home? Was it something that you guys were doing prior to coronavirus? Was it something that you enjoy, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes? But it looks like most people prefer to do hybrid. So working from the office some days, working remotely some days, or just working remotely. So very few people said that they do not like working from home, which I can empathize with, and it makes sense to me. And it looks like a decent amount of people worked in the office full time prior to coronavirus as well. So that's something that's interesting. I feel like most people that we've spoken with, it's been a good mix, but most people have said hybrid actually. So it's definitely interesting to hear your feedback, and we'll get to some of the challenges that maybe you guys are experiencing now. So, now that we're all sort of forced to be at home and adjust and try and figure out new ways of being productive, it's become blatantly apparent that there are some challenges doing this while everybody else is in the same situation. So from an employee perspective, competing with maybe your family members, maybe your roommates, for your bandwidth from your residential AP is something that's particularly challenging, I would imagine, especially as a parent with kids who are now doing school from home. So you're having multiple devices trying to connect to a Zoom call, stay connected, probably throughout the entire day. So that's something that's incredibly challenging as an employee. But as an employer, when you think about how is your business going to be impacted over the next couple months, you want to know and be certain that you've taken the appropriate steps to make sure that your employees can be as productive as possible. Now, this is an area in particular that I think a lot of enterprises are running into walls where they have their employees saying, listen, I can't be productive with my residential internet connection because it's not going to work for everybody in my house to be able to carry out the activities that I normally would at the office. And then from an enterprise perspective, there are a lot of challenges, right? First thing being cybersecurity. The other issue being VPN. That was something that historically enterprises relied on from their employees to use. But once you talk about the scale or think about the scale that we're looking at, maybe it was that you had 50 employees at one time using a VPN and terminating that. Now we're talking about your entire workforce. So it becomes increasingly complex, increasingly difficult to manage. And these are things that you want to take into account when you're trying to understand, A, is it worth looking into a solution? And then B, what are the requirements that I have for this solution from an enterprise perspective, from an employee perspective, and then from a carrier perspective as well. These are the issues that you're going to have to tackle, and it's a matter of trying to identify what the best way to do that would be. So let's see. Paolo, I know that we had spoken pretty in depth about VPNs previously. So what do you think the top challenges for a company that's trying to maybe do this on their own, trying to understand, maybe let's just make sure that all of our employees are using a VPN? What's sort of the pitfall of that, or the challenge that you'd run into as an enterprise IT group trying to make that possible?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the opportunity here. Obviously, we do offer VPNs, and it is definitely an adequate solution for companies who have been practicing that, who have the proper IT staffing, who have bought the proper gear, and who are using it in a wise manner for those cases where it's really needed. Okay? Which is not the case when you suddenly send 100% or 90% of your workforce home, because it's really not adequate. What we saw is it's very, if you're not prepared to it, and if you want to apply it to one size fits all, it doesn't scale. It's very work intensive if the benefit is not clear for certain employees. And you also might find that just deploying the client or the software in a massified manner and bringing everything back to your concentrator, to your firewall, or wherever you want to terminate it, might bring additional problems to you if you don't dimension that termination device for all those simultaneous encrypted sessions which suddenly you are receiving. So what we think is that there are better ways of enabling and empowering your remote workers. There are better ways of really making sure that that connectivity is according to your policies and liking. Notwithstanding, VPN is definitely a solution for some use cases. Okay? And there is need and there is use for it, but it's not that magic bullet for everyone. And if you apply it, then you need to be aware of the labor-intensive and investment-intensive consequences of doing it.
Sounds good. I think that's a good explanation as well. So I just launched another poll, which now I can share with you guys. You can see, just to run through sort of what your personal challenges are, and keep that in mind. I'll ask another follow-up question in a couple minutes about your view of your employer's reaction or adjustments to coronavirus, adjustments to business since coronavirus has happened. But it looks like it's pretty spread out actually across multiple answers, which I expected, right? It's always a balancing act. There's always going to be a little bit of the fact that your home internet was not really built to be having 4 people on Zoom calls at the same time all day. You're also then trying to battle with maybe your kids or your significant other in terms of maybe you're trying to stream Netflix. Maybe this is just when you're home too. Maybe somebody's trying to stream Netflix while you're trying to have a meeting, or somebody's trying to play Fortnite. It just becomes a nightmare to try and be productive all at the same time. And so it becomes very, very challenging to actually work and get things done. And from a business perspective, that could slow down, obviously, some of your initiatives. So keep that in the back of your pocket. And as we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's to be expected that companies weren't necessarily prepared to have their entire workforce go full remote all at the same time. And so some of the challenges that we've heard, and specifically LLA has done a great job of getting feedback from their customers in terms of understanding, how this is going, what are some of the tools that they rely on. But one of the things that was particularly interesting is that this isn't necessarily siloed into one region, one industry, one type of customer. So Paolo, do you want to talk a little bit more about how this is impacting industries as across the board rather than just segmented, or what did you guys sort of find in your initial search and feedback there?
Yeah, what we found is that many companies were unprepared for what happened with the pandemic, and they started adopting certain tools, and while doing that, they discovered that traditional connectivity solutions were not up to the task anymore. Okay? What we also discovered when talking to those different customers of ours is that it's not just B2C or not just B2B as an abstract mass. It's not even different verticals. Like you can see from the stats there, also the graph which comes from Slack, it is actually the use case inside a company which you have to attend to. And you might need to be flexible on your side to find different solutions for different departments or different job description inside a company. You might have a secretary, you might have an engineer, you might have a product manager, you might have a legal worker, you might have a call center agent. They are all different. They are differently adequate and differently suitable, and they have different needs when it comes to remote work. Okay, so this is where we really have this lengthy discussion with our customers and really want to understand from them, look, what are your employees actually doing while they are at home? What are their concrete needs? What can we actually develop for you? How can we tailor our solution so that it actually fits you? And maybe it's not just one solution. Maybe we need to give you 2 or 3 different solutions for 2 or 3 different use cases inside your company. And Benu actually allows us to have that flexibility, to have that degree of propositions. And this is why we're actually very, very happy in being able to leverage on that framework we have from Benu.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good to hear too. That's the goal, right? I guess what sort of pressure did this put on you guys? Because obviously you're in the same situation in terms of the enterprises, in the sense that you need to find a solution, make sure that it's able to be delivered, and then deliver it all within a time span that's very, very short, especially in comparison to how you would normally do things. So how did you guys account for that in what you were looking for, or how you sort of got feedback, or the next steps that you were deciding to take?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, there were some immediate solutions which were driven obviously by the economic difficulties of the markets, the countries, the segments, the customers, and sometimes even sponsored by government legislation regarding attenuation of the fees, the waiving of late fees or the charges, or like we are doing currently also, zero rating certain school access to video schooling, remote schooling. But overall, it was an adaptation also of our network. We saw that the traditional peak hour of businesses used the network more during certain times of the day versus residential uses the network more during other hours of the day. That blurred, utterly blurred. So peak hour for now is continuous from noon until 9 p.m. And overall, not only us, overall globally, you have stats from many carriers where the fixed network usage increased between 40 and 70%. Mainly driven by Netflix's, but also in the video, business video, with MS Teams usage being up 600% since January. And like we saw before, Zoom becoming the most downloaded app in the months of March and April. We also needed to adapt to mobilizing more of our field ops, ops center or call center staff, and having our own call center now working from home. So it means that we are drinking our own champagne here, and we are applying our own products to our own stuff. And this also gave us a lot of insights. Also geographically, we have a shift with from towards more residential areas. In the past, you did build a lot towards business parks, but currently our focus in rolling out networks and reinforcing the capacity has moved a lot towards residential to really make sure that, might it be for private use or might it be for home work, that really our customers have an excellent experience and the network is really up to their expectations. And on top of that, we also accelerated the resilience and the digitalization of our networks. It was really, like we see in many jokes out there, it was really COVID driving the digitalization of many companies. And we are offering more and more digital tools, digital interfaces, transactional customer journeys, and acceleration of onboarding for our customers. So really, these are the challenges we faced, and every carrier faced them. You have stories coming from the Netherlands, from the UK, from US, from Singapore, from Australia, and they are all similar to our stories. And I think we are up there with the best, and we reacted very quickly, very well. We exchange a lot of information, we talk a lot to our peers, and we see that the solution we came up with is really up there. It's in the top 3 of the most innovative solutions which are being brought to the market. Liberty has really nothing to be ashamed of when compared to the usual top 3 and the usual suspects of who is in front in this market. So once again, thank you to Benu for really allowing us to be at the forefront of what we can give to our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited to hear more about what you guys are doing and planning on rolling out. So, but it's tough, right? Like that whole experience is obviously something that is a balancing act between trying to find something that will fit in your budget. From a functionality and flexibility perspective, I think that's incredibly key, because you want to be able to find a solution that lets you adjust based on different types of customers. It's not going to be a one size fits all. It's not going to be something that's cookie cutter. It's not going to be able to be, as well received if you can't be flexible with it and you can't empower your customers and enterprises to be agile with what they're doing. And then, of course, interoperability is always something that you want. You never want to be locked into one vendor. You want to be able to make sure it's extensible over time. And then from a carrier perspective, I think one thing that you touched on, Paolo, that's particularly interesting is making sure that what you're doing and how you're reacting isn't going to hurt you down the line. So you want to make sure that you're not cannibalizing other products and other revenue streams that you have implemented in place that you continue to count on, for years to come. So it's definitely a challenge. It's something that is not necessarily just, you can add it to your cart and you're done. There's obviously a lot more that goes on behind there. And we had kind of touched on this a little bit in your discussion, Paolo, about how the telco market has responded in terms of trying to just respond very quickly, understanding how usage has changed, seeing if there are areas that maybe you can offer something as a discount, or you can open up a network, so open up your hotspot network to allow maybe students or maybe just individuals to connect to that so that they have widespread connectivity. But in the long run, I guess, what is your perspective on some of those reactions? Like, do you think that's something that will be sustainable? Is that something that's going to harm them in the long run? What are your thoughts on some of these responses?
It is a new world, obviously. We are trying to be empathetic and accommodating to any difficulties customers are really feeling. So we are in a long-term relationship with our customers and say, okay, we understand that currently you have these challenges, so let's work on how we can, in the meantime, work together. But the effects are here to stay. So remote work will be massive. Depending on the stats, anything between 60 and 40% of the workforce will continue being remote long-term. And senior HR people really assume that, are starting to define policies for that. What we find is that Benu allows us to act on several fronts. Benu, for example, through the wireless access gateway, allows us to act on that hotspot area, which you just mentioned. We can also, with the MDU solution, which you have, attend to concentrations or multi-dwelling units and really see how we can fragment that and deploy that in a massified manner. Also, how we can, with your business gateway, bring business-specific features to those teleworkers, to those enterprises, and hopefully also to the bars and restaurants and any dwelling time company once things open up and going to a cinema or a bar or a restaurant becomes normal again. And there again, Benu is helping us with a cloud-native solution. And this is what we really were looking for when we started to look for tools to face these challenges. Benu is intrinsically cloud-based, which allows us really to deploy very quickly value-added services with reduced mean time to install. So we can really satisfy huge amounts of customers in reduced amount of time, thanks to that flexibility, that zero touch, and that remote approach, which Benu really now makes possible for us. We can leverage on what we already have out there, or we can augment it, or we can really purpose build something if that is really needed and required. But we wouldn't have that portfolio of options and that flexibility combined with speed and economy if it wouldn't be for Benu. Okay. So Benu really allows us to attend to companies' needs and our carrier needs.
Right. Absolutely. And I think actually that segues perfectly into talking about maybe what didn't work or what were some of the requirements that you guys had outlined originally. I think some of these would definitely be on the list, right? We kind of went over that a little bit before in terms of like from a high level, what you would want overall, right? Is something that fits in the budget, something that has the functionality that you want, but it's flexible enough to be able to sell to a variety of different customers and solve their needs as well. And then, of course, from your perspective, you want to be able to manage that effectively and be able to make changes accordingly. And I know that you guys had launched or changed it so that you are able to implement your solution faster with less of a touch than you would have in the past. So that's obviously something that's important as well. And I think that's kind of where being cloud-based really can help, especially from a visibility perspective. But in terms of a general outlook on if you are a carrier trying to figure out what your next best move is, what the solution requirements should be for before you jump into the market and try and talk to every vendor who says our solution is the absolute best, you don't need to look anywhere else. You really need to be able to center yourself and say these are the things that you need to meet. If you can't meet these, then it's not going to work for us. And so this is kind of a good outline of that. But Paolo, do you want to walk us through some of the alternatives that you guys have evaluated? I guess what that process looked like. Were there things that really stood out to you as not working or stood out to you as being really differentiated or I guess game changer for you guys and what you were trying to do?
Yeah, thank you by all means. Yeah, we obviously, when confronted with this, you start looking in your goodie bag and your portfolio and you say, okay, what would be a solution? And you equate everything and then you start excluding, and then you end up with what is the most suitable solution. In this case, it was Benu. We looked at we are talking to enterprises, large enterprises, who are sending 3,000, 5,000 of their employees suddenly home. And the dialogue with these type of customers was normally about typical enterprise-grade fat pipe connectivities, which is really not the thing you should or would want to replicate on a massive scale for 2,000, 3,500 employees per company. Okay. Also, the off-the-shelf residential triple play bundles, not really up to it, because why would you want to offer a video service, a television service on it? They really just want to work. And there were in the past for some years some third-party teleworker gateways out there, but we saw that even during the pandemic, those sales didn't really skyrocket. It wasn't the magic bullet from an operational, from a field service, from a price point of view. It wasn't really the solution neither the customers nor us were looking for. Also, we know that some carriers, mainly in the US, they started addressing this with the one tool they had at hand, which was really throwing the full-fledged SD-WAN solution at all of those teleworkers. Whilst it might make sense for a couple power users, really, like I said before, inside a company, there are different use cases, there are different needs, there are different personas. And for a few of those, SD-WAN might make sense. And we have that offer. Obviously, we're also selling SD-WAN already. And this is an option. And we are talking to customers about SD-WAN, obviously. But for the mass and for most of the employees, it is not really the magic bullet. And like we also talked about, plain vanilla VPNs is not really a solution. For some customers it is, and we have been deploying it in dialogue with some customers, and those who are adopting and using it are very happy with our VPN solution. But once again, it is not the solution for, I would say, 80% of the working from home cases. So we have been excluding or relegating or using them very selectively, all those strike-through options, whilst Benu allowed us really to, based on pure connectivity, to address the different access types we have, and Benu's deep knowledge of those soft GRE, QNQ, PPOE protocols allowed us really to find a very technical solution based on our connectivity and addressing whatever that neighborhood was served with in terms of access, whatever that teleworker was served with in terms of access, and to just overlay the solution on all of these access types, thanks to Benu's flexibility and knowledge of how can we really overlay and have an OTT-like cloud proposition in terms of value on top of all of these access types. Benu obviously also allows us not to act only on the access type, but also inside the home. Okay? We can also act on that new frontier, that new battleground, which is Wi-Fi. And obviously the demarcation line for us has moved from just being the CPE, but actually going inside the homes, inside the office spaces, inside the restaurants and cafes, and providing service there. And Benu's actually control of what we can do with Wi-Fi allows us to act on the radio interface and on the access interface, and to provide really an end-to-end solution of value add to every teleworker.
Yeah, that's awesome and incredible to hear. So I know that you had touched on these, right? Like flexibility, it was easy for you to deploy on multiple access types. It's interoperable and customizable, which is really valuable in this situation in particular, just because things are changing every single day. You're going to have to adjust, not only what your customers' needs are, but how you're able to address them as well. And doing that on the fly is, almost invaluable. So on top of that, we also, one of the things that you alluded to a little bit, but that I wanted to point out was that we do have a robust feature set. You can layer services on top super, super easily, which is not something that is common in the market, at least today. So from a carrier perspective, then you can launch multiple products from one investment or one deployment, which is something that's super interesting. And I'll have Mike talk a little bit more about that in the upcoming slides. And one of the things, I guess, that we had talked about previously too, and especially which is pertinent now, because you don't necessarily want to be sending you know, trucks to people's houses, trying to roll that out and having people come into contact with one another. We can leverage your existing infrastructure for the most part. You don't have to add a new box. You can use what you have, especially in this particular instance. And that helps with zero touch implementation. So you can get started without having to sort of have all this additional effort, have people come in, and really, you know, it's just better that way. Social distancing while being able to deploy products is really, really incredible. And one of the things that I really wanted to highlight is that we are a small company and we treat this very much as a partnership. We don't want to just sell you something and then have you run off and struggle and, you know, have to do that. We want to understand what you guys are going through. We want to be able to know, how can we make this better for you? How can we get this launched in a way that makes sense for you? Are there requirements that maybe we hadn't thought about previously that would be really, really valuable to you? You can bring those to us and then we'll integrate that into what we're doing. So that's something that's incredibly unique, especially in this market, going up against some of the bigger companies that don't necessarily have the flexibility or agility to respond in that way. And so, Mike, I'll actually hand it over to you if you want to walk us through some of the nitty gritty, really great details about our solution, particularly from a services perspective. I know that we didn't touch on that as in depth as maybe somebody listening would like to know. So for context, just before we jump into how this works and what it looks like, we do check all these boxes, which is really, really incredible. It's not something that's it can be mimicked in the market today. So we're really excited about this, and we really want to be able to get going, help more people be able to extend their enterprise Wi-Fi to the edge. So Mike, I will hand you the mic, the hypothetical mic.
Yes, thank you, Shirsha. And just while I'm talking, if you want to, Zoom seems to have taken away my video again, so if you can sort of re-enable that while I'm talking.
Sure.
So first I wanted to give people just a view as to, like, you know, what the network architecture looks like, just so they can get an idea of how this solution is actually built. So we start off with, you know, what's going on in the home, and what we recommend is that you set up a second SSID that is in the home, that is for the teleworker, and this could be named like the name of the company. So, you know, if you're working for ABC Corporation, it's would say, you know, ABC, and so that employee would then connect to the ABC SSID. And this can be done on just about any existing residential gateway. So if you by having that ability, the carrier themselves can now leverage their existing asset of residential gateways in the homes. Not only that, the teleworker does not have to go and install new pieces of equipment, which generally speaking are one of the primary sources of calls to support, is that initial setup of new equipment, Wi-Fi coverage issues, things like that. So if they're using the existing Wi-Fi that's in their home, they already kind of know, they've got a known system, and they're not dealing with a bunch of new headaches because they had to put a new box into the home. And that connects back to our SD Edge platform. You can see I don't specify what kind of access network it is, because we run over any type of access network. It could be cable, DSL, or PON. A company like Liberty has a broad set of access network components, so we're able to support any of those. And then from there, we run a bunch of services on our SD Edge platform, and then the traffic, after it's been, had the right policies applied to it, it will be sent to the right destination. So it could be to the internet, could be to a headquarters where there may be a data center with some applications that are custom to that company. Could be public cloud or private cloud services. And then the nice thing about this architecture is that we are, by partnering with carriers like LLA, they can implement QoS, quality of service, right at the edge of the network, which is the most effective place to put it. versus something that is purely over the top, and the QoS is really done much deeper into the network. That, and also the SD Edge platform can be co-located with cloud peering points, which will of course provide improved performance for cloud-based applications. So we've really designed this solution, given the legacy of Benu being in the carrier space for a decade now. It's a very carrier-grade solution, and it supports tens of thousands of teleworkers per node. So it's a very scalable solution for a multi-tenant large enterprise environment. So how do we manage this this architecture and this infrastructure? So we have a cloud-based service that can be either purchased as software to build as a cloud solution in the carrier's network, or it can be purchased from us as a software as a service, cloud service. And the first layer of management is really for the ISP or a managed service provider, where we have an admin manager for creating all the enterprise accounts. We also have an operations manager that is for system-wide configurations and overall viewing of the SD Edge platforms. We have a solution called BOSS, which stands for Benu Operations Subscriber Simulator. It's specifically for user experience monitoring, and it simulates user traffic from the endpoint of the network all the way into the core, and looks at the response times for DHCP and DNS and HTTPS, and so you can see a granular view of the user performance. And then we have our SSA tool, which is for doing subscriber session analytics. Now that's all the ISP tools. The enterprise IT also needs something. They need to be able to set up their environment for their teleworkers, and they want certain policies enabled. So you need to have another layer of management for the enterprise IT to create those accounts and also set up the policies. In some cases, that enterprise may allow the teleworker themselves to actually do some modifications or some setup of their own within their own home environment. Or alternatively, for a company like LLA that has both business and consumer operations, they can sell this teleworker solution directly to consumers. And then those consumers, if they purchase a teleworker solution, may, likely would expense it to their business. But that would enable someone that's having particular challenges with their broadband connection. They could, purchase the teleworker solution directly without having to wait for their business to go ahead and do that company-wide. And then for business sites, we support all of these capabilities for regular office sites, and oftentimes they will need a guest network, and so that can be added on to providing guest network access within the office site. The nice thing about this is because we have this cloud option, it's a full solution that doesn't require the operator to build anything. So if you're feeling like, hey, we got to get to market quickly, now LLA, I've got to give a lot of credit to Paulo and team. They have been able to move extremely fast, and it's been impressive the way they've been able to execute upon implementing their own cloud environment here with our solution. The SD Edge platform is composed of a very highly programmable and virtualized data plane. We then have network functions that run on top of that. So if you're, one of the things is we can run these teleworker services on top of a broadband network gateway or on top of a service gateway platform. And then you can see here, we've got a variety of services that can be used for either a managed home or the managed business teleworker solution. So quite a few different services that can be layered in, and you can kind of pick and choose which ones are best for your business and how you want to bundle them. So in terms of how we stand out, I think in the market, and one of the reasons we were able to form this great partnership with LLA is first, or one of the key things is being able to leverage existing CPEs and residential gateways. It makes for everyone to be, happier, both in terms of the teleworkers themselves, but also it's a more cost-effective solution for the enterprise if they are purchasing this solution, and they're going to have fewer headaches with the initial setup. The other aspect is the B2B as well as B2C sales options. So because we have this teleworker management layer, you could sell directly to the end consumer. The other thing that's quite different from our solution is that we are doing device level controls, and we actually move all this advanced functionality from being required on the residential gateway to being implemented in the network. So you have less dependencies on your residential gateways, and that enables you, if you've got 15, 20 different versions of residential gateway, from different vendors and different firmware loads and different models, you're not going to run into all kinds of quirks with, does it work well on this one versus the other one? You're going to have a consistent experience across all of them. And we do that, all those policies for individual devices, whether it's an IoT device like a security camera or some sort of sensor, or it's a laptop versus phones, so you can really tailor the policies. And then, like I mentioned, the multi-layer cloud management. And so I think we really have worked to build this actually over the last several years. It just happened that we were working on this well before COVID for the last couple of years. And we feel we really stand out in all these areas versus other types of solutions that are out there on the market. We want to highlight that, hats off to LA for capitalizing on the opportunity here, because carriers have an opportunity and an advantage to go and capture this teleworker opportunity versus the SD-WAN and wireless LAN vendors, which will be selling to the enterprise and will be competing with the carriers. The carriers have the leg up here. They can do the QoS at the edge. They can leverage their existing infrastructure. They've got a great B2C and distribution presence within the homes, and can provide a complete solution. Whereas I think where the vendors that are going it through the enterprise, it's going to be challenging. They have to put a new box in each employee home. There's probably going to be an expensive SD-WAN subscription. And usually these solutions are designed for office space to connect into an SD-WAN, not for thousands upon thousands of individual teleworkers. And so the scaling and the complexity of it is going to be a challenge. So that is, I think, a pretty good summary. And I guess we've got a few minutes maybe for questions. So.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I didn't need to go back. All righty. So let me just open these. First of all, thank you guys for running us through that. I think that was incredibly valuable. And I hope everybody on board feels the same. So I did have a question come in about LLA and who they're delivering it to, but I can just answer that. So this is going, not necessarily, it's not going direct to residential customers. So this would be for their business customers, their enterprise customers, and Paolo, correct me if I'm wrong. And then the next question, oh, sorry, Paolo, what were you going to say?
All right. So this is a B2B approach that is sold to enterprises, and we might have different solutions for residential, but here we are really tailor-making something as a consequence of the need and the dialogue we had with enterprises. So it is a B2B product.
Awesome. Okay, and then the next question that we have is, does the SD-WAN features as well as the security features are provided and built by Benu, or do we use a third party? That's the first part of the question, and then I'll ask the rest of it after that.
Yeah, sure. I could probably cover that one. So, so we have a fair number of our own SD-WAN features, and same thing for the security features, although we do sometimes partner with security vendors for the more advanced capabilities. So that's the answer there. And we have experience there where we've stitched in via service function chaining third-party security vendors. And that can be important if the enterprise has a particular brand they really want to use.
Okay, and then the next part is there a specific appliance involved in deploying these solutions?
So our solutions can run on an appliance, if you will. It's really just an off-the-shelf server. I mean, we are, and so it would run bare metal on the server, or and in that way, it's sort of like an appliance. But we have a lot of our customers running it as a virtualized solution in a virtual environment, and so that's we can go in either direction with that.
Okay, and then the next question is this solution portal customer self-service oriented, or would it be a centralized service under LLA control?
Yeah, at this stage, we are open to many of those options. So if the customer wants to have more control over it, then Benu allows us to hand that over. If the customer would like a managed service to be provided, then obviously we have the track record and we have the trust of customers to provide that too. So once again, Benu allows us to think about going to the market with either options, and it's not really cut in stone. We are just very flexible here about who wants to really have the work and the responsibility.
Okay. And the next one is for us. So how does Benu provision new hardware going into residential or business?
Well, we have some interfaces for so this is really probably more the carrier will be configuring any new hardware going into a residential business, and we have some tools to interface to like their ACS, their auto configuration server, which will often be what interfaces into the residential gateway and configures it. So that's sort of a joint solution that we develop with the carrier. We also have a small hardware platform that can go into the home or small business that is configured directly from our software and that is particularly useful if for out of footprint environments where you need to put a new box into the home because you don't have a gateway there already.
Okay. I'm multitasking. I just launched a poll for whoever wants to answer that. There's another question that came in regarding identity management. So the question is, what do you propose for identity management? How is the integration with that client's, in parentheses, enterprise system?
So the authentication of the endpoint occurs, is part of the SD Edge platform. So the Teleworker, that connection is, when it's set up, is an authenticated connection. And then the idea is that if there's any kind of application authentications or identity management that the enterprise uses, that is essentially kind of transparent, almost as if you're sitting on the LAN, the local area network of your headquarters business, wherever you're normally located. But if there's needs for particular or specific LDAP or AAA integrations, we can support those.
And then another question, I think this may be the last one just in the sake of time. Feel free to continue sending them to me and we can just get you a response outside of that. So does your SD-WAN have the ability to connect to other SD-WAN appliances, or does it only peer to Benu SD-WAN?
That is probably a long answer that starts with it depends. So we probably have to take that one offline because I think it would depend on what exactly is being done on the SD-WAN appliance and how it's connecting to us and what it's expecting.
Okay. Alrighty, so I know that we're a couple minutes over, and I really thank everybody for hanging on with us. I do have the marketing email here, which basically just goes to me. So if you have any additional questions, follow-up questions, anything that you'd like to dig a little bit deeper into, especially if it's more specific to what you're looking to roll out, feel free to send that over. Otherwise, I hope that this was really valuable. Thank you again, Paolo, for joining us. This is so exciting for us and definitely more fun to do a session like this where we can just chat and really walk through what your guys' experience was. So really thanks for your time. and thanks for everybody's time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Me too. It was really a pleasure, and looking forward.
All righty. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.